Hello, I'm Jevon D and welcome to the first weekly episode of the DM's Crutch. With me tonight, I have Mary E. Chris and Mim. And why don't you two introduce yourself, plug your channels, do whatever you need to.
I guess I'll go first. Like I said, I'm Mary Chris. Handy by day, artist by night. You can find me on Facebook and DeviantArt and all sorts of other social medias that you can find links to in the description.
And I'm Wim. I'm playing D&D, which is pretty much all I do. And I like talking to people, which is why I'm
Awesome.
here.
Thanks, Mim and Mary. Hey. Since we don't have any questions or comments because it's our first episode, let's just kind of talk first about what I want to do with the DM's Crutch, and then kind of get into some topics. The way I see the DM's Crutch going is kind of a question and answer format. So if any viewers have questions or comments, they're free to leave it on the video or email them to me. All of which will be provided in a YouTube description. And we will answer those in later videos. We ideally would like to have this posted every week on Fridays. And we just kind of cover different topics that have to do with role-playing, Dungeons & Dragons 5e, Pathfinder, whatever questions come up. But we want to do it more from the aspect of what makes a good player and what benefits the DMs, tricks they can use to make sessions better, tricks players can use to really improve the quality of the sessions. And so that's gonna be kind of our focus point unless someone has a specific question. So let's begin tonight's video with talking about the kind of player we want at our tables, whether it's from the perspective of a DM such as myself or another player. So maybe let's have you begin and say like the number one thing you want out of a player that's gonna be playing with you. And kind of why you think that's important.
Okay, sure. It's probably the one. Speak me. I'd say the number one important thing for me is, I guess, the role play. Really, I enjoy the story that the DMs present, and then I enjoy like the other players and the characters that they bring to the table to make the story happen. I'm the kind of player that really tries to get into the mindset of my character, so that way I can authentically help tell or bring to life what the DM's trying to run us through. And for me, it's very fulfilling. It's very exciting. It's just like, I'm actually on an adventure, and so I want everyone else to be on an adventure with me.
Awesome. That definitely is a very important part of being a good player. How about you, Rim?
For
It's
me,
like the most important thing for a player that you want to have play with you, and why it's important?
That the player wants to have fun with all. And that means not hogging the spotlight, allowing other people to play and play their character, and not only responding to what the new one does or the guy that is there and hogging the spotlight.
Yeah, that's definitely a very important point. A lot of players really don't understand how the spotlight works. And it's really nice when you do have a player that does understand it and can shift it off of themselves to another person or another character. But it's also the DM's job to do that. But it's nice for the DM as well when the players kind of do it on their own.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of a balancing act, really, sometimes.
It is.
And, yeah, everyone just needs to kind of work together, especially the DM. And, like, they do seem to take the bigger role on that. And, like, okay, you're very good at holding the spotlight and such, and, like, getting things done. Like, that's great. And for me as a player, sometimes I really enjoy someone who's like, they know exactly what their character's doing and they're just like driving the story, and my character's like, I'm just along for the ride. But at the same time, there are moments where, like, when my character is like, wait, this is applicable, my character needs to do something here. And like me needing to be able to step forward and be like, can I have this? And the person having that presence be like, I need to back off now because this is their moment. Or even the DM, like, giving those opportunities to some of the quieter players. I remember being, when I first started up in OSG, one of the campaigns I was in, I played a very quiet role, and then the DM was like, okay, Mary, guess what? Next session, we're highlighting your character. And it's like, oh, okay. And like, it was very nerve-wracking, but it was also a good experience.
And that's one thing I do try to do also. If I notice like an entire session's gone by and someone's been really on the back burner pretty much the whole session, then the next session I try to bring them to the most active spot. Some of the other things that I think are really important for players to be a good player: show up on time. I don't know how many times I've had to wait to start a session and end up canceling it because we were low on time, or go ahead, play, and then we just end up running late. Hey. Yes, sometimes life happens, and you can't always say, hey, okay, I'll be there at 9 p.m. and you work that day and you get off at 9 p.m. Yeah, there's gonna be a 15-20 minute deal while you get home from work. But if you can limit that and make those times when you are running late very limited and quick, we don't mind, because usually the first half hour is just people hanging out, catching up on how everyone's doing anyway. At least in almost every session I've ever been in or DM'd. Some of the other things I think are important, or the people having what they need to game, having the character sheets, having the dice, when they sit down. Yes, we'll take breaks, and we don't mind if people get up and grab something. But at the same time, if it's constant, it's a distraction. And as we all know, distractions help break immersion, and the less immersed you are in what's going on, the less you like the story or characters, and the less fun you have with it. And along with that, I would also say being consistent. It's, if you if you say you're gonna play in a one shot or a campaign, do everything you can to be at those sessions. Yeah, stuff comes up. It happens. That's life. Like, but if you really make a point to fulfill what you say you're gonna do, the DMs and the other players are gonna understand when something does come up that you can't avoid. So what's some of the other qualities is the both of you think make a good player?
They know the background of the character. They know why they behave like they behave.
Okay. So having taken the time to actually work on the character, flesh out their backgrounds, their personality.
Yeah, have them be more than their stats.
Yeah. And that's something I can't stress enough. I've played with players who sat under me, who their entire personality and background was, I'm a human fighter and so is my brother, and they play both characters. And that's their whole backstory. They're brothers and they're human fighters. And their personalities like, okay, it's my turn. I hack, I slash, I deal 10 points damage. When roleplay happens, okay, I'm going to the bar, I'm ordering a drink and a meal, and then I'm going up to my room to go to bed.
To be fair, maybe they just have a very plain, stiff character, but I think what would make it interesting, like how you said, you just had very, just one shot, like one word answers, basically, like, they're brothers, they're fighters. That's it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, if they are a stiff character like that, like, maybe elaborate on why they're so stiff. Why are they so simple?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things with the particular player I'm thinking about. He had no reasons in the backstory at all, because his only backstory was his two characters were brothers.
For bros.
They didn't even know what town they came from, didn't know if any of their relatives were alive, which made it hard for me as a DM, not to mention the other players, to interact because they had basically no personality, no backstory, and there wasn't nothing I, as a DM, could draw off of from that character or to put into my sessions that would mean something.
Yeah. Sorry, you go one.
I didn't put up my finger, so you're fine.
I was just gonna say that, like, I think coming from a DM perspective, it also helps you engage the character. Like, it gives you things to draw on, especially like DMs who like literally, here's my world, here's the overarching kind of like plot theme, what's happening, events, but oh, your character has like daddy issues. Well, we're just gonna like bring that up here over on this section of the campaign to address. And so,
Exactly.
in a way that should engage the character even more to make it a better story.
Exactly.
Um,
And yes, man.
no, but I was gonna ask, is that player that is coming to you, is that a first time player? Or has
No,
he?
he been playing for like 15 years.
So,
But it was second edition.
still,
But
he should know.
even then, yeah,
He should know better. But that just gives you leeway. You say, okay, you don't make your background, I'll make your background, and
exactly.
deal with it.
And that's kind of what I ended up doing, and I ended up making that player mad because he didn't like some of the stuff did, and then threw at him. Yet he would never take time to talk to me outside of the sessions, and so I could ask, "Hey, what do you think about your character having this as part of his background?"
Right.
So he eventually left the table. And it was a shame because everyone liked him as a person and wanted him as part of the group, but they
Yeah.
didn't enjoy playing with his characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so I think that's definitely very important for players to consider as well as the DMs. You you have to make these characters come alive. They have to be people. Oh,
Yeah.
if they're not, it's not going to be as much fun.
Let alone they being your character, have fun with it. Like, mess your character up, make them have lots of problems or just challenges that it's just like, oh, you have a lot of issues, don't you? Or you can make them very simple, but with something that kind of explains
Yeah.
why they're simple. Like, just have fun with it. It is your
Yeah.
character.
And,
Well,
and along with that, it's also interesting because you can work on stuff you're dealing with as a person in real life through your character.
Yes.
If you're suffering from, let's say, depression as an example, and you have trouble snapping yourself out of it, and you come across a depressed gnome, for example, watch how the players interact with him. See how they try to cheer him up and get him to feel that life's okay.
yeah.
And then you can apply that to your own life.
Well, when I started playing, I came into an existing campaign,
Yeah.
and well, being a first-time player, I asked, what kind of character do you need actually, or what kind of class? They said, well, we could use a cleric for healing, and I said, okay, well, and I kept the character as close to me as how I want to be, not how I am, how I want to be.
Yeah.
Okay, and that made it possible for me to make a believable character,
Yeah.
and
I've,
it interacted with the other people.
yeah. I've done both. I've done characters that literally are just like me.
Yeah,
And I've done characters that have qualities I wish I had or could improve on. For example, growing up, I had really bad anger issues and didn't know how to control my temper. D&D got me over that because as one of my characters was this very spiritual old character, almost like a Buddhist Zen monk. And his class was monk. But just playing him true to his character and oh, this is how he would handle this situation, I started applying that stuff in my real life. And over time, I learned to control my temper. Thankfully, otherwise I probably wouldn't have a computer right now. But that's just because of technical issues. So,
Yeah.
we've kind of covered characters and some of the qualities we want players to have. What about a player's personality? What kind of personalities fit with you guys as players? Or DM's personality? Or both?
I don't know. Like, for me, my personality, I just kind of mesh with a variety of people pretty well. Um, there are some people
And most people do.
there are some who can be very overbearing, um, and I guess the ones who are, I guess, more critical in just like how things are going, whether like it's going really well or no. Of course, if it's going really well, they're having a great time and whatnot. But I guess those, like, I've played with people where like if the DM's not doing what they're kind of wanting, they get really agitated. I also have seen it where the DM and his buddy kind of are like off on this like game where the rest of us are just like, why are we here? And so, oh goodness, I don't even know really how to describe it. And like I'm describing situations, but
Yeah.
Where the DM is playing a different game than the players.
Yeah.
If the D, I think I remember hearing someone talking about this just the other day, even where it's like DMs who works. I think it's actually you, Jaron. Like where DMs are working like against their players. Like, yeah, of course the DMs are wanting to like thwart their players as hard as they can, but like within reason. It's not.
It has to be both.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like,
There has to be that attempt to make things go wrong for the players.
yeah.
Because that puts a good story in. But it doesn't have to be to the point where it's impossible for the players to
Making it no
accomplish what
fun.
they want to do.
Yeah, like DMs play. Like I play with players who are like that too.
Some of the qualities I like in a player is I like players who are interested in the story, who are there to have fun and work as a group.
Yes, that last one. Work as a group, and I think that even ties in a little bit with like metagaming, like players who.
Sometimes metagaming can be useful.
It can be, if you tie it in reasonably, but like, yeah, players who are team players. Where
Exactly.
it's like they bring like you can have.
You gotta be team oriented.
And this I think applies a little bit more in like people who. This is my opinion. Like I don't know if it's like true fact or anything, but people who play evil characters, for example, that is probably one of the hardest alignments to play when you're in a group of like neutral or good people, and so.
Not for me.
Well, again, like this is my opinion, but in a way, like I've seen it where people who play these characters, like it's like their sole purpose to like just to derail the party or thwart the party, and you're just like, dude, this isn't fun. Like we're trying so hard to work with you, or at least to. We don't want a TPK.
Yeah, it really depends on how it's done.
It does, but the player who, when they make it like their goal, my player's going to kill everybody, or make it very difficult and impossible to do anything because I have my own agenda, and it's like, thanks.
But that's doable. Your own agenda.
It is. It's a whole balance thing.
Doable. For example, I had a character that ended up being chaotic evil. The entire party was lawful good or lawful neutral. Oh, at first I started as chaotic neutral, but then because my character had a thirst for knowledge of all kinds, he looked at some necrotic texts that he shouldn't have and found out his mentor, who had been training him to be the spirit walker who walked in the world of dreams, was actually a necromancer. So he started studying necromancy, and with a little bit of reflavoring, we could do things like chill touch on our party members, making it sound like we were trying to use cure wounds. So we would do small things like that, and for 6 months I did this.
Wow.
Just little things here and there. Okay, I'm gonna add this herb to the stew, and I'm gonna pretend to be too sick to eat, but it will make everyone else sick to their stomachs. Oh, must have been some bad meat in the stew.
People who could pull off characters like that, where, like, hats off to them, truly. Like, I find it pretty amazing. Annoying, but pretty amazing, because,
Yeah.
like, I can't do that. I can't
What
find that
what
balance.
surprised me the most wasn't being able to pull it off. It was the fact that none of the other players caught on for 6 months. What was going on? Me and the DM would be laughing after like every session after everyone left, because of like how well I managed to play it off, as I'm actually trying to help the group, but at the same time I'm doing small things that kind of hinder them. Oh, hey, let me allow me the honor of saddling your mount. Now, saddle the mount. Okay, I'm gonna make sure this buckle's just a little bit loose. That way, if they hit a full gallop, it will come undone.
Yeah.
Small things like that uh, can be fine. They can be fun in a campaign. They can add a lot of story and interaction, especially when the other characters find out what's going on. But you don't want people like that who aren't at least trying to make it look like they're working with the group.
Yeah, at least part ways.
Yeah. And really, when it comes down to it, it is a group game. Yeah, people have their own agendas, their own goals for their characters. The DM has his overall story, but they are telling it together. So it's really important that characters match up well, players match up well. Yes, Mary.
I'm just like, players match up well. It's like, yeah, that is important to say the least, but it's not a game breaker either.
No. Oh, well, sometimes it can be.
Oh, definitely.
Hey.
Like,
But
I'm pretty sure.
usually it's not. Usually, a players and DMs can talk to a player, say, hey, this isn't working for our table, and the players who are here, it needs to change. And most of the time, players will change. There are some that won't or can't, and those players kind of get pushed off to the side. I didn't. Oh, well, this won't work for our group. Good luck finding a group that fits you. And it's a shame that people have to do that, but but you have to protect the group also.
Yeah.
Especially as a DM. I can't allow just anyone in a session that I know is a very serious tone session. I need people who aren't gonna derail, who can stay in character, be immersed in what's going on, etc.
Yeah. But do you sidelining a player is easier to do when you're playing online games than in real life because
Yes,
players are not so densely populated. I don't know how to call that,
Oh
but
yeah,
it's very hard. So then you have to deal with them, and
yeah.
that's hard.
Oh yeah,
Because most of, when you have real life gamers, they are your friends, and how do you say, okay, you don't fit, your play style does not fit in this campaign.
Yeah, it's
Can you
really
adjust
hard.
it, or what will you do?
Yeah, it's really hard to do. Oh, luckily, I've been blessed most of the time with players that if I mention it, they're willing to talk about why it doesn't work and make adjustments. But I have had some. I have a real life friend that I will never speak to again, and because as he overturned our D&D table, oh, and then went into the kitchen and grabbed a butcher knife because he was that upset. I had to disarm my friend who was going after one of my other players who was a young lady, eh? And then we had to, as a group, because some of the other players intervened as well, escort them out of the house and off the property. We had to tell him if he ever did something like that again, cops would be called. But that was safety of the players were at risk there. If I didn't disarm him and I took a chance at getting hurt there, he could have hurt any of the players. So it's really hard in real life because you never know. People might be having a really bad day and just blow up. Online, it's a lot easier if they're not feeling good or they're having a bad day, they just hang up and go offline. So yeah, there's a lot of issues with that. And it's a shame when it happens. Luckily, it's only happened a couple times in my 30 some odd years. But I've even had it happen online where we've had to remove players that just didn't fit with the group. And one of them in particular ends up in another group of mine that is real light-hearted, derails a lot, because she's there for the social aspect and hang out, have fun with her friends, and not really care if they play at all or not. So it's really important for the DMs also to judge the players on their personalities and get to know your players. Spend time talking with them, even out of sessions. It's like I consider both Mary and Mim good friends, and we spend hours on Skype just chatting about our lives and what's going on that day. And it's not always D&D. Although we do talk D&D a lot. But that's because we all love the game.
We all have characters we're working on.
No, really, we are actors without a stage.
Yeah?
Pretty
yeah.
much.
Oh, I got another crazy idea.
Okay, let's make it a one-shot.
Yeah, pretty much.
What if I made the evil person not the evil person? And then I gave him a puppy. What, Mary? Just.
Oh, so you mean like we got planned for the Dragon Lich?
Right?
If things go the way I think players will take them in that campaign.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, okay, so we've talked kind of about the person and type of person we want at our tables. Let's talk a little bit about the type of characters. And by this, we've talked a bit about how we like having the background stories fleshed out, flavor to the character, a personality. I myself don't like real gimmicky characters.
What? No snowflakes?
Yes, snowflakes, they may be called.
Oh, darn.
I don't mind if they have a gimmick or something unique about them, but the way people tend to play the characters we often call snowflake is that's all they're about. That's all there is to the character. And that's where I don't like gimmicks or snowflake characters is there's not just one thing to anybody in this world. Everyone has different sides of them and different personalities that pop out at different times, different flaws and ideals and ideas. That should be the same with the character. So, what do you guys think on that? Is there anything about a character that you would add to that?
It's hard to say because I feel like, at least for me, and as you mentioned, like we did talk about the backgrounds and whatnot, and that's kind of my thing is just having something in the background. I also try, like at least in the forefront, have something unique.
Yeah.
To not derail. Like for example, Gaia, who I'll be playing here pretty soon, she has some quirks, and they're constantly changing from day to day. But I had to really brainstorm, like, okay, if I'm going to give her these quirks, they can't be like she shoots laser out of her eyes today or something that's like totally like bogus. Like what? That's just going to totally derail the campaign.
Yeah.
But something small like she can't remember anyone's names. It's just like it's
Excuse me.
but she acts like she does. Like it's one of those things that people could pick up on.
Yeah.
And if they do, then they can address it. If not, then whatever. It just keeps the game keeps going.
But that also isn't all there is to Gaia.
No.
She has a whole nother backstory.
Oh yeah, totally.
He has a character. She has a very distinct manner of speaking.
Oh yeah, that
she
actually
has a
there we go. That's
personality.
it. In characters, it is fine when people are able to bring a voice to them. 99% of my characters, this is the voice. Hi, I am Araya, Malone. Hey you, like, there we go. That's their voice. But when I play Gaia have accent, and that makes it interesting, more fun, I suppose. A challenge for me because it's like a vocal exercise. Like, oh my gosh, I don't speak like this, but
and it doesn't have to be so much accent. It can just be a manner of speaking, speaking softer or
and people who are able
louder.
to bring that into their character, it's just a little extra, just like,
Yeah.
oh, that is
Exactly.
so and so's character,
And that definitely is one thing I like when players can do that, because especially if they use it only for when the character's speaking. Because then when they go back to the normal voice, I know, okay, they're done speaking, but they're gonna be doing this.
Yep.
So that's kind of my thoughts on characters. Is pretty much we've covered a good character and what makes them interesting. Did you have something to add, Ben?
Well, you mentioned this gimmick stuff, but that's really a player's crutch for having no background.
Yeah.
I think.
It can be. Sometimes the gimmick is part of the background. For example, with Corvus Lantic, my gnome wizard, and his pet raven that does a lot of the speaking for him. Part of the background is that was his master's familiar. And when he came back and found his master dead, the familiar was the one that comforted him.
Right.
And then they bonded. And because of that tragedy, Corvus became mute for a long time. And the raven did all the talking for them.
Yeah. But I wouldn't call that a gimmick.
Yeah. It kind of is, but in a way it's not, because I tied it into the personalities. I tied it into the backstory. But when I first came up with, I'm going to play a gnome wizard who's mute, who has a talking raven, it was totally a gimmick.
I don't know if I ever done a gimmick, but yeah.
Yeah, and gimmicks are usually just something you use to kind of to highlight your character. And a lot of times, like with the Raven, for example, yeah, I had to use him to speak, but he wouldn't always be speaking as the Raven. He would speak for Corvus. But occasionally I would use him as the gimmick. Who's the familiar? Are you the gnome's familiar? I don't know. We take turns.
Right.
Kind of deal.
Yeah.
So sometimes it was a gimmick, but I tied it into being more than a gimmick.
Yeah.
But a lot of players, if they find a gimmick they use or like, they don't do that.
No, and
they make
actually,
it that's all the character's about.
And the way you describe it, the Raven has a purpose.
Yeah.
And it's not just there to make the character look interesting. It has a purpose.
Exactly.
So yeah.
So we've talked pretty good about players and characters. So since all of us are really fond of role playing, let's talk about what makes a good role player.
One who tries their best to really just be their character, whether they're very solemn, serious type, or something very bubbly and happy, and just like, hey guys, let's go do this. I'm so excited, and like being able to kind of capture that essence. Granted, I'm not perfect at role playing. I totally break character a lot, and so, but it happens.
Okay, that's definitely an important part of a good role player is that they can capture the essence of the character. Uh, what do you think, Rim?
I'd I'd agree with Mary, but I would also say a role player plays off of what's happening around him and
Exactly.
responds to it.
Yeah.
It's not a soloist. It's not there monologuing, trying to bring his character to the front. It's responding
Exactly.
as you would, well, as we all do when we talk to other people.
Yeah, that's definitely a important. Uh, one of the things I find also makes a good role player is immersion. Don't derail.
Yeah.
Well, it,
Yeah.
yes, derails happen. And
I try.
every session will derail somewhere along the line. I, but if you minimize it, uh, and then bring it right back when it does happen, it's not that bad.
I think it's
But
definitely.
if you can stay in character and be immersed in what's going on for 5 hours at a time, hey, you're better than me at some things.
That, the less you derail, the more content you can get through.
Exactly.
Usually, when for probably every time you derail, it's about an average of 5 minutes of just playtime, and so that
Usually.
adds up.
Eh,
I'm
But
just throwing out a number.
that's one of the things I think is important is you really get immersed in the story, what's going on, what other players and the characters are doing, and you kind of keep your head in the game. And you don't bring in outside references as to some stuff. Yeah, some groups do it. They get a chuckle out of it. Uh, and in the right circumstances, it can work. But I find most of the time, if you bring up a movie line reference or something, it's gonna derail the session. And even though we're pretty good about bringing it back after a couple minutes, I have been, uh, uh, there have been times I've sat as a DM for an hour waiting for players to get it all out of the system so we could continue playing.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I can also see how for some players the immersion gets too intense that they need the
Yeah,
break. That
it
either they
it
need a
can.
break or
Yeah,
they need to break immersion.
yeah, it definitely can, and that's also kind of the DM's job is to judge how the sessions affecting the players. And if it's getting to where everyone's really tense and okay, what's gonna happen now? Oh, okay, let's call a 5 minute break. Like, let's go grab a drink, refill our cup of coffee, use the restroom, whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
Or grab something to eat. And it's
Talk about
good
this
to
new
have a
comic coming
break
out,
in mid.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to have breaks in middle of sessions anyway.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing an extremely long session.
Or that,
And I've
or
had some that ran 6 out plus hours.
I know for me, no matter how engaging something is, like I have to like walk away because I just get my brain just gets burnt out. It's like we're done. We've looked at this for X amount of time, and oh look, what's over here? Let's go play real quick. And so like having that break is a nice just moment for me to detach go in, get all the sensory fill I need from other things, and then come back and be like, okay, so this game that I've been enjoying.
Exactly. One of the other things I think makes a good role player is being descriptive in what they do and how they're doing it.
Yes, 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 yes. And I learned this in a one shot just the other night, where I was playing my wolf girl, and just how I understand her and like her mannerisms. I don't know. I have this crystal clear image in my head, so I'm able to like really describe it, and I'm like getting inspiration points left and right, and it's like, but yeah, being able to describe what your character is doing definitely adds that realism to them. Like, oh, they know what they're doing. Let alone it gives the DM less like loopholes to try and be like, oh, they're doing an investigation check. Well, they didn't say they're going to check the closet, so they don't check the closet. Yeah, you don't make your investigation check.
And that's one of the things I find and a lot is we're lacking in description. People have gotten good at describing combat, describing what they're going to do as they're talking to an NPC. They tend to forget about describing the skills. Okay, I'm gonna do an investigation check, for example. Well, where are you looking? What are you looking for? Do you see a statue in front of you? Are you feeling along the statue to see if anything's out of place or can be pressed in? Stuff like that really adds a lot of flavor.
Yeah. But I think that a player shouldn't ask for, I want to roll investigation. They should describe to the DM what they are doing, and then the DM says, now you roll perhaps history check, because you are in an ancient ruin and you have knowledge of how these castles are built, and that they're
and you're reading these books.
And let alone,
right. So,
I play with DMs who, when characters do a very thought out description of the skill check they're trying to attempt, they'll give them advantage. Be like, you know what you're doing, you know what you're looking for, so you get advantage. Just see what happens. Or they'll just be like, yeah, you got it, and explain it as it is.
Yeah, and it's always interesting because really with the way the roles are supposed to work, or it's supposed to be that you tell the DM, at least in 5th edition, what you want to do, and the DM's supposed to tell you what check to make. It's not supposed to be players saying, well, I'm going to roll a nature check. It's, oh, I want to find out if this berry off of this bush is poisonous or not. Do I know anything about it? But what it looks like. And then, well, yes, you know. Yes, make a history check. You know this is a very famous poisonous plant. It's some of the barbarian tribes coat their arrows and spears in this to bring down big game. It doesn't always have to be the check people think it will be either.
No,
I mean,
but that's
you can do all sorts of things. You could do a survival check in place of a nature check or an investigation check. Well, yeah, you know how to survive out in the tundra, so you know what tracks of beasts look like. And you know these tracks are of a wild mammoth.
Yeah, but it's the same thing for if a barbarian that's always been in the tundra comes for the first time in a city, and he doesn't know that he has to check his weapons so that he can draw them without, and he just walks in and he gets arrested. And what kind of check does he have to make to kind of explain that he didn't know? Or is that a survival check? Is that a knowledge check? So yeah, it's
Yes, so that's definitely a interesting a, thing, and it's really up for the DM to call what check to be made in that situation.
yeah,
So we've covered kind of role-playing characters, players.
yeah.
So I think that's a pretty good uh, first session. And hold on just a second. Uh, Sorry about that. Scott was trying to call. Oh, so that's a pretty good first session of the DM's Crutch. I don't think there's any other topics we should cover tonight. Alright, so do you guys have any last thoughts about what we talked about? Or
What
even guest appearing on the DM's Crutch?
Nothing stands out as like not being, or like there doesn't seem to be like any want or gaps of just like, oh, what about this? And so I'm feeling very satisfied with the things that we talked about, and so, and thank you
Good.
for letting me be a part of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
anytime, maybe. How about you, Rim?
I think we cover player and character pretty much. It, it, and just um, for even before having the player group together, talk with the wannabe players, what they expect from the game,
Yeah, definitely. A session
and
zero, so important.
and that's well, it's yeah, it's. I mean, the DM is a player himself. He just has the others do his bidding,
Yeah,
sort of, in his
yes and no.
adventure.
And actually, the DM's more of a player than the players are, because he has to play everything else.
Right. So
Lots of
yeah,
hats.
Exactly.
talk with each other before you start and see what everyone is expecting from the game and take it from
Exactly.
there.
Sounds sounds pretty good. Well, I'm pretty content. I think we covered everything quite nicely on the topics we did discuss, and there are numerous more to talk about. Oh, so, since I don't really have anything to add, we will simply sign off saying, may the dice always roll in your favor.